Hi, Chris. Good afternoon. My audio working?
Yeah, yes.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. It looks like we've got a few folks, so shall we get started? Let's see, Maya, is Sarkis going to be joining us today?
Sarkis is sitting next to me, so
Oh, he's just incognito
he
today.
will be joining, but he can provide input if necessary.
Okie doke. All right. All right. Well, I guess we should get started. First of all, I want to thank everybody for attending. We have a really exciting project that we're working on. We wanted your input. So before we get started, I'll introduce myself and then let's go around and introduce each other so we know who's here. Sarah from DKS will be taking notes. So my name is Mike Usen and I am the project manager on this project. I lead the electromobility practice here at DKS Associates. We're a transportation engineering and planning firm specializing in, among other things, electrification of transportation. So we're working with the entire, basically all of the different regions throughout the central coast of California to come up with a plan to electrify transportation in the, well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to find out who else is here. So let's see, why don't we go around the room starting with Tim?
Thanks, Mike. Tim Gilman, Slowcog. We've been working with DKS and our partner agencies on this, so just curious to hear what's going on today.
Great. Maybe Kelly?
Hi everyone, Kevin McClendon, District 5 Caltrans. I've been following along as part of the partner team, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more.
Excellent. How about Sarah?
Which one? Just me?
Sarah, I'm sorry, Sarah Sweet.
There's usually more than one Sarah, so I'm never sure. Hello, yes, I'll be taking notes. I think I know most people here, but I am with DKS, but formerly I worked for a utility for almost 7 years. So interested to hear what this group has to say.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, who else? Nagra? I'm sorry, Babita?
Hi, it's Babita, yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, nice to meet you. It's Babita Nagra. I'm from PG&E. I'm in government relations at PG&E and here to support the utility side of the conversation. Forgive me for being a little unprepared, but I just received the invitation for this, so looking forward to the conversation.
No preparation necessary. We'll give you everything you need to know. Let's see, Steve? Steven?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name's Steven Valle. I'm from the city of Lompoc, so we're a publicly owned utility, and yeah, same. I kind of got this notification last minute and haven't really followed up with this ZEV strategy. I've heard about it, but yeah, excited to be a partner. Try to have our needs aligned with this ZEV strategy. It's obviously going to affect our operations, so. Yeah, definitely excited to see what's coming out of this.
Excellent. Thank you. And Barry?
Yeah, I'm not with the utility, but Slow Climate Coalition. It's a community-based organization that does promote clean energy solutions, and electric vehicles. Electric vehicle charging is really important, and we do get funded by Central Coast Community Energy every once in a while to promote EV related programs.
Excellent. Well, speaking of Central Coast Community Energy, how about Dan? You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Dan Bertoldi, manager of energy programs here at Central Coast Community Energy. We've certainly been hearing a lot about this effort and excited to learn more today. I do have a conflict at 1:30 where I'm going to have to duck out, but my colleague Oswaldo Martinez, who's on the line, I believe he'll be able to stay on.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you for letting us know. Oswaldo, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go to Maya.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Dan. Oswaldo Martinez, Energy Programs Analyst, working with Dan on programs like Electrify Your Ride, among others, in Central Coast Community Energy. It's nice to meet everyone.
Great, thank you. And Maya.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. This is Maya from SPCAG. We're sort of spearheading this ZEV strategy with SlowCog and AMBAG. So it's great to meet everyone.
So Maya is our client, and looks like you're on, Veronica. Or I don't know if you're here. Okay. All right. Well, let's get started. Anyone else? Is there anyone else who didn't get to introduce themselves? All right. So I'm going to walk you through a quick PowerPoint that basically will provide the orientation. So, but Babita, you're new to the project. This will hopefully answer a lot of your questions and give you the context that you need. So let's see this. Okay, here we go. So here's the agenda. And talk a little bit about the project and what we're trying to achieve for this project, then talk a little bit about what we've learned so far. We're in the process of doing the analysis, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the most of today's meeting is really getting input from you, the utilities and other key stakeholders on the energy side. So there are 6 objectives to this project. The first is to assess the existing zero emission vehicle infrastructure, the environment, with a focus on the unincorporated rural areas between the cities. So a big focus of this project is addressing parts of the Central Coast that might not have been addressed through other planning efforts. Most of the charging infrastructure that's typically installed is where the people are, which tends to be the cities. But travelers travel through the unincorporated areas. And so we want to make sure that interregional travel is addressed through charging. And so bringing our utility partners on board is really important, because obviously this is not necessarily the areas where you are structured to serve those loads. So the next task is to identify the key challenges and barriers to interregional traveler and motorists, as well as not just for light duty, but for heavy duty, because trucks are becoming more electrified, of course, as are transit, especially with the needs of interregional transit. And one of the things that's somewhat unique about this region is there's a lot of long haul bus routes. The third is addressing equity. So charging deployment today is not very equitably distributed. And so we want to talk a little about that. And I'm going to show, I think I can show you some maps on that. And then we want to make sure that these investments that are going to be made through this planning process are deployed equitably, especially to meet the needs of underserved populations. And then fifth is to recommend specific infrastructure improvements, as well as related investments, and develop policies and implementation strategies that promote zero emission vehicle adoption. And then last but not least, hopefully there's going to be more funding opportunities, and we want to position SBCAG and the other key stakeholders in this project for funding. So hopefully the sites that we will identify and the other things can be funded through various incentives and rebates and whatnot. So that's basically the 6 key objectives. Any questions before I move on? Okay, so this project is addressing the needs of many different stakeholders. We are, and utility providers, of course, are the focus of today's stakeholder focus group, but there's other focus groups other stakeholder groups that we're trying to address their needs as well. We have a project website, and the URL for that website, and maybe Sarah, if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. But anyway, there's a number of different, there's a lot of different stuff on this website, and these are some examples. One of the things that's on there that I would encourage everyone to take a look at, if you haven't done so already, is the existing conditions report. I'm going to talk very briefly about it at a very high level what we found so far, but this is a report that kind of summarizes that, and it's currently on the website. The other website that we have is it's called Social Pinpoint, and Social Pinpoint is an interactive tool to allow key stakeholders and the members of the public to provide input, recommendations, suggestions, raise questions that can help inform this planning process regarding, specifically where to put chargers, what types of chargers, where there are concerns, where there's issues. And this is a screenshot of what that looks like. And if you zoom in on the Social Pinpoint, you can look at various locations. And certainly we would encourage the utilities that are represented here today to use this. And it's a great tool. And here's what it looks like if you wanted to put in a comment. And again, the URL is there. And Sarah, if you could add that to the chat, that would be great, because your typing skills are better than mine. Okay, so the existing conditions report, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the findings from the existing conditions report, cover all 6 counties within our study area. It's looking at the key corridors, looking at the patterns of travel within those corridors, and then especially focusing on what's there in terms of charging infrastructure. And again, the focus is primarily on the unincorporated areas and the areas that are close to freeway interchanges on the study corridors. So this is the map of the study areas showing the different geographies within that. This also overlays with the with the Justice 40 data, which is looking at disadvantaged populations. And this map also shows the designated alternative fuel corridors. There's been 6 rounds of the EPA's alternative fuel corridor designation. So this shows the accumulated 6 rounds of designation. One of the recommendations that could come out of this project could be additional corridors for alternative fuel designation. Then last but not least, the colored dots show existing chargers. Of course, this is a very high level map of a very large geography. In the existing conditions report, there's much more detailed maps. And if I had more time today, I would go through those maps with you. I don't. So I would encourage you to go on the website, download a copy and check it out. If you have comments on that, definitely let us know. This is a summary table from that report showing where the chargers are by charger type for each of the 6 counties. As you can see, Tesla is disproportionately represented because they were out first. So we designated those separately. We have both the Tesla designation, the destination chargers, as well as their high-powered chargers, the superchargers. And then for the non-Tesla, we also identify them both by level 2 chargers, as well as by DC fast chargers. The chargers that are within the NEVI proximity, meaning NEVI is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, which is hopefully funding a lot of the chargers going forward. To meet those criteria, we have identified those in the parentheses. And I think the next map shows the breakdown between cities and unincorporated areas. And as you can see from this map, the majority of the chargers today are located in the urban areas and the cities, not in the unincorporated areas. So again, this project is trying to focus more light on the unincorporated areas. So that hopefully provides a high-level overview of what we found to date. Before we move on to the discussion questions, does anybody have any questions about the existing conditions?
Yeah, can you describe what rule, how rule is defined in this document?
Sure. So, well, here, let me go to the map. Does this map show it? No, this map doesn't show it. There is a map in the existing conditions report that will answer your question, that will illustrate an answer to your question. Yes, so incorporated areas are the jurisdictional boundaries of the cities. So San Luis Obispo, Monterey, Santa Barbara are examples of cities. The areas in that are outside the city limits are technically unincorporated. That answer your question? So, you know, they may or may not feel rural, but they are outside the incorporated areas. So the city of Santa Barbara does not have jurisdiction. So if the city of Santa Barbara is doing its own electric vehicle planning, which it is, their typical planning study would focus within their incorporated area. So it's the areas between, say, Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo that are unincorporated that we're trying to address those needs as well.
So you're saying that unincorporated areas of the county equals rural?
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, from a technical point of view, that's the case. It may not feel that way, but certainly that may or may not have anything to do with CCCE's service territory. But although I think it does in this case. But anyway, what we're trying to do again is make sure that folks can travel between incorporated areas and have enough charging capacity so that range anxiety does not discourage electric vehicle adoption.
Well, what about the cases where incorporated cities, such as, you know, if you go down the Salinas Valley, Greenfield, Gonzales, King City, you know, those are certainly incorporated cities, but they would, you know, they do definitely represent, I think, kind of areas, at least from our perspective, that are really needing further EVSE build out.
So
and what we would kind of consider as rural areas, even though they're incorporated.
That's a really good point, and also a really good suggestion. So this is an example, thanks Dan, of the kind of input we're trying to gather today so that we can develop a plan that serves the need. I'm based in Seattle, as is Sarah. We have other folks on our team who are based in California, but you know, I'm not personally an expert on this geography. So we want to get your local expertise to incorporate that into the project so that we can make sure this project meets the needs of the entire region. So that's a good suggestion. And I think that's a good segue into the discussion question. So one of the things that we want to understand from you, the utilities and others in today's focus group is there infrastructure, EV charging infrastructure that's planned that doesn't show up in the data? So the data that we've been using include the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which is a federal website that tracks EV chargers. We're also looking at PlugShare, but we're also trying to crowdsource. So if you as utilities are planning charging infrastructure or have programs that will add charging infrastructure, we should make reference to this in the report. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to get a handle on. And I know both PG&E and CCE, and you know, full disclosure, we are also working for CCE as a consultant, helping on programs. So we want to make sure that your programs get addressed as well, so that context is addressed in the plan. So charging infrastructure, what are you planning and what should we be paying attention to?
I can go first on behalf of Central Coast Community Energy. So we have a lot going on. Probably the thing I'll focus on the most is our Electrify Your Ride program. This program provides incentives for both electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations, both the equipment and the electrical work associated with the installation. We provide incentives for residential or commercial customers. This year, what we're doing that's new, and Mike, I know you know all about this, is number one, we're providing technical assistance for commercial public-facing customers who are interested in installing level 3 charging stations on their public-facing properties. And we're also kind of providing technical assistance for multifamily properties. And we're providing this year, which is also different, pretty significant incentives for the actual, implementation of DC fast charging stations. So, this is something that is still under development. We plan on having sort of these resources made available to our customers starting in November. In addition to that, we are actually looking at providing both technical assistance and incentives for our ag customers under the sort of ag electrification program for specifically for DC fast charger build out. One other thing that is I'll mention that is not necessarily a program, but it's something that we're working on. We're working with Build Momentum on a blueprint, a grant provided by the CEC for a blueprint. I think it's actually also funding this initiative as well. But we're looking just at medium and heavy duty, basically EV and zero emissions transportation build out. So that was kind of the quick and dirty of what we're doing now. We have a couple other things that may be related, but I think I'll leave it there. Unless Ozzy, I'm totally blanking on something that is really important.
Yeah, we're working with our member agencies, which in other words translates to all of our city and county jurisdictions that participate in our joint powers authority. And we work with member agencies who wish to install level 2 or level 3 charging stations, either behind the fence or for public access. We're going to continue. We did a version of that program a few months ago, and we're going to continue a new version of those offerings starting in early December.
Excellent. So what's great about all of those examples relate to this plan because you're addressing things like social equity in terms of meeting the needs of residents who don't have access to charging, and also medium and heavy duty, which would include goods movement, which of course is one of our objectives. Okay, great. Okay. Anything else before we move on to perhaps PG&E?
Okay.
I had a comment about the existing infrastructure plan.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple things. One is especially in terms of the utility providers that are here, I would think it'd be good to show on the existing facility or existing facility conditions plan or the map, possibly where some of the larger, I don't even know what the nomenclature is, the bigger transformers are, so that, the cost to install DC fast charging, I know that takes a lot of power. And so seemed to me that it would be good to have those big substations or whatever you call them located on the map, so that that would maybe help decide on where good locations are. And then secondly, I noticed in the list of Tesla chargers, there was Tesla destination chargers. And I learned real recently that some of those destination chargers have the J1772 level 2 outlet, and some do have Tesla proprietary connections. And I'm wondering if it'd be useful to break those out.
So the question is, well, those are two separate issues, and we could let's take them in reverse order. I think that's a really interesting point. I was not aware that Tesla had any J1772. I do know that they've made adapters available to motorists. So the question, I guess, from that would be worth following up with Tesla is does Tesla have data on that? Because I don't know if that's available in AFD, alternative fuel data center data. But that's something we should look into, because if it's not, that would be something that we might be able to obtain from Tesla directly. But I think that would be relevant, because that changes the way we're reporting the data is assuming those are exclusively for Tesla use. But maybe we'd have to have a separate category for joint use.
Right. Yeah, and I know for a fact, because my wife was out, she needed a charge. She had forgot to take her adapter with her. And I said, oh, there's a Tesla destination charger at the hotel just down the street from you. She went there and it was all J1772 connections. And so she had to go to a couple more hotels till she found one with a proprietary connector that she could use.
And in your image, you're leaning up against a Tesla in front of a Tesla destination charger, it looks like.
Yeah, that's actually one at the showroom in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So I kind of have a follow-up question for the utilities on the line about your transformer suggestion, Barry, because I know the utility I worked for, for security reasons, we weren't comfortable sharing maps or really detailed information about our power system, because it was a security issue. It could make us a target for terrorism. So I'm curious, from these utilities, what are you on the line? What are your policies around that? And what are you able to share? Because that is really, like Barry's totally right, that is really important to know for EVSE installation planning. It's just hard because it's like a chicken or egg, because we have good locations for them, but without knowing the power, it's hard to recommend. But I know it's hard to scour the entire power system and say where are good places to install. So yeah, just curious, what are your thoughts?
So should I just jump right in? Yeah, okay. So first of all, so PG&E has quite an extensive range of programs and funding for EV installation across the service territory, and it's open to pretty much every customer. But before I get to that, all the list of programs and incentives that we have, just to address the question, about how do we take a study and essentially be able to internalize like how much available capacity is there, or which transformers are the best to site a location at. So recently, PG&E just developed an integrated capacity analysis map. And so if you have an account with PG&E, you can actually log in to your customer connections portal and access this map. It'll show you all of the transformer information that is located in your account, and be able to kind of, you can go around on your own time and look at the different transformers at each of your buildings and see which one has the best capacity available. So that's kind of like where we ask customers to start on their own. But if you're looking to install EV infrastructure that's over like 2 megawatts, you really probably should sign up for a new application through PG&E and have someone from our service planning team really go through that analysis with you. I can drop the link to the integrated capacity analysis map for you. So you can view it if you have an account with PG&E. But it's a really great tool. And back to your question, Sarah, about security around that, because you're right, there's a lot of, there have been in the past a lot of concern around sharing that data with customers, but we feel that at this point, we need to really provide that tool to customers, especially in this period that we're in right now, where they're developing projects and they're planning out for 5 to 10 years. We need to have you do a little bit of research on your own as well beforehand. But like I said, for those larger load sites, we want to definitely step that process through with you. I'll pause there if there's any questions on that tool, and then I'll get in.
Yeah, so actually I do have a follow-up. So for a planning, and this is not just a planning project, this is a mega region planning project. As you can see by this map, it's a massive scale. So we're not in a position to look at every single site within a 6-county, vast region like this. So how can PG&E support planning at this scale?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's part of why I'm here. So I've been sitting on similar working sessions with different working groups across the CCZEVS territory to really collect that information on where you guys are looking for optimal locations. And then within PG&E, we have a team that's essentially like analyzing this data for us to see what infrastructure is going to be needed into, will there be infrastructure needed? Is it something that the grid can support already with the infrastructure that's there? So this is something that PG&E is starting this coordination. It's going to be ongoing because we know that the demand on our system is going to be real. It's coming. And so, yeah, I'm here for you pretty much. If there's going to be sites that are larger than 2 megawatts, we want to know about that. And then I can coordinate with you with the right people within PG&E.
Would it be possible to provide a map of where there's abundant capacity and where there's insufficient capacity at the front end, so that because we're in the process right now of evaluating where to site things. So if there's an area that there's lack of feeder capacity, for example, that would be something we should note and try to find areas where there is sufficient feeder capacity, and those would be that we could prioritize those for adding chargers.
Yeah, I mean, this region is really large, so it's going to be very difficult for us to take a look at it from this very large zoomed out perspective. What I would say is if you've identified like sites that are more like city-centric, localized, what we can take a look at is those individual sites and then be able to analyze them. If any are like further along than others, and that like meet that threshold of 2 megawatts, that's kind of the threshold that I would say we would definitely want to analyze to see if we can serve it safely. But from a regional level, it's going to be very difficult. I can take that question back to our planning team and see what they come back with, but from my other conversations with other like working groups, I don't know if that's something that we can do, just because there's so many different wires and substations and that serve on the local level, that a zoomed out kind of study like this would be a little bit difficult.
Sure. Okay. Well, anyway, I think what would be useful is, we're focusing on our key corridors. For the NEVI site, for the sake of an argument, that's a 600 kilowatt load. So that's well below the 2 megawatt threshold that you cited. So it sounds like we shouldn't be too concerned about a typical NEVI site with 600 kilowatts. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like I said, if that individual project is further along in its progress, I would suggest starting a service application as soon as possible on it, just to get PG&E aware that it's coming and it's something that you're planning for.
So again, this is not a bunch of projects. This is a plan. So what we're the name of the document is the Central Coast Zero Emission Vehicle Strategy. So we're not going to be applying for specific applications. We work also at the site scale, And so at the site scale, like our work for CCCE, we will be submitting applications for service upgrades. But in this case, we're really, it's very regional. What we're really trying to do is identify based on travel behavior and travel demand and lack of existing charging infrastructure. That's going to be really the focus. So we are identifying specific, freeway interchanges where would be appropriate. And we'll have a range of load. It'll be probably up to 600 megawatts. There may be some examples where we might have a truck stop where there's a heavy duty, or potentially for a joint transit layover facility where you have multiple regional transit agencies sharing a facility. And that could be an example of where it could exceed a 2 megawatt load. So those are the things I think we could work with you. We will not be submitting a service application, however. That's just not part of our scope. It's beyond the level of this project.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they're basically recommendations at this point. I think what we would love is if we had a way to make our recommendations even better by adding in capacity as one of those metrics we're looking at.
Okay, got it. Let me take that question back and see if there's something that we can do on a regional level. I know before, like I said, it's very difficult, but we may be able to do something where maybe it's county by county.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. Let me see what our team says, and we'll get back to you.
If you take a look at the existing condition support, because I think that the structure of the existing condition support breaks it down by county.
Yeah.
And it could be implemented by county. So I think that would be a very realistic planning scale. And I suspect that PG&E, and certainly and one of the things I'm still a little fuzzy in is to how PG&E's role and the community choice aggregators within your service territory work in terms of where your role and their roles interface.
Sure. I won't speak for the others on the line, but what I would say is that for PG&E owned facilities, we are responsible for delivering our electricity safely to our customers. And then many of our programs that we offer are actually offered to CCA customers as well. So there's that offering too. And I can get into those different programs if we're ready for it.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, does anybody else have any questions related to this topic before we move on to these programs? All right, go for it.
Awesome. I'm going to give you a little snapshot of each program, but I could speak probably for 30 minutes on each. But the first one we've got is our EV fleet program. This is really where PG&E is going to build out the make-ready charging infrastructure for on and off-road medium and heavy-duty vehicles. So if you're looking at a transportation agency, a city, county, privately owned business that's looking to electrify their fleet vehicles, this is ideal. To give you some context, PG&E essentially covers about 70 to 80% of the project cost. And we also, in some cases, will provide a incentive for the actual EVSE charging port. And that really is for customers that fall into the disadvantaged communities, and we're using EnviroScreen as that category for disadvantaged communities. And that program is going to be running for about 1.5, 2 more years. So if you're still not, ready with your project right now, something to consider is to apply for it in the next couple months, or even like 6 months from now when you have your plan in place. What we do require for that program is that you show that you're purchasing vehicles. So we do have to have a purchase order in order for you to be accepted into that program. The next program is EV schools. And so this is really focused on electrifying buses for schools across our service territory. This is the shorter window of time for this program. We only have 2 years left on that program for people to apply. And we'll be installing level 2 ports across the service territory. Again, a portion of this program is really dedicated to installations within disadvantaged communities. We want 40% of the sites to be in disadvantaged communities. So there's that. And then within that program, we're also providing EV curriculum development and educational outreach to schools so that, you know, people can learn more about it, learn more about charging behaviors and what have you. The other interesting thing that we just received approval on is Electric Rule 29. Now, this is a really, really interesting rule. This offers expanded cost coverage for to-the-meter work. So let's say you're pursuing an EV project and you don't want to use PG&E programs for it. Let's say you're doing a charging infrastructure project at a mall. Well, this rule will cover the to-the-meter work for non-residential customers. And it's something you apply through service planning, similar to how you would submit your application, but the electric rule will cover that to-the-meter work. So that's something new. It's definitely covering a lot of costs for the customer, but definitely you should make everyone aware that's part of this plan that is a new rule that's out. And then next year in 2023, we're hoping Q1, we'll be launching a couple programs. The first one is a pre-owned EV rebate. This is more like the residential side, individual side of things. This will be a post-purchase rebate for pre-owned EVs, and it'll be about $1,000 base rebate, and then up to $3,000 for income qualified customers. And then the second one we're launching most likely early next year is going to be our multifamily housing small business direct install pilot. And this is where we're going to be looking at multifamily housing units, small businesses that are in underserved communities. And we're looking at installing level 1, level 2 charging at these businesses and housing about 450 sites across the service territory. But again, the application will be open to anyone, first come, first serve. But definitely great for some of these maybe rural communities that are smaller businesses. You know, they may be in small like hub areas, like along the highways within these areas. You know, not they're not on the freeways themselves, but on the highways within the rural farming area. Could be a good program for that.
Yeah,
and then,
so that ties in nicely with the rural focus of this project.
Yeah, PG&E has definitely heard a lot of feedback around serving the rural communities and also serving the the economic side of things. And so we proposed several programs to the commission, and those two were what we came out of what we proposed earlier last year. And then the last program, which we're really excited about, is still at the commission. We're still waiting approval, but this is, I don't know if you've heard of our EV Charge Network program, which we had about 5 years ago. We filed an extension, and this is essentially where we'll be able to install level 2 and DC fast charging for government buildings, park and ride lots, multifamily housing, really pretty much any use case. It's going to be a very, very large program if we do get awarded it. We're looking at installing over 15,000 chargers. And right now, so the commission has our proposal. We're supposed to receive a final decision either later this year. I would probably anticipate early next year. And if we do get an approval, then we'll look at starting the program for customers like early 2024. And it would run for about 5 years. And so there's a focus on also serving disadvantaged communities, rural communities as well. So this will be ideally a program for this area.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great program. We worked with you on that for the city of South San Francisco 4 or 5 years ago, and they ended up with I think 36 level 2 chargers as a result of that.
Yeah, it's a great program. And so because so many customers are so happy with it, we were like, hey, let's find an extension and see if we're able to continue doing that.
Okay, great. Well, in the timing of this project, we'll be wrapping up in the spring, so we'll have an answer before this project wraps. So we'll make sure to address that depending on the results of how the commission votes on that. So a couple of quick questions. The first, are you using, you said you're using CalEnviro screens. Are you also using the Federal Justice 40 designations? Is that part of the consideration?
No, so there's a delta between some of our programs. So some of our early programs were based off of SB 350, and within that, the Enviro screen was used as the classification for disadvantaged communities. For all of our new proposed programs, we're using the classification within AB 841. And I don't believe that is that doesn't use the one you mentioned.
Okay.
The
Justice
Justice
40.
40.
Okay.
But I can check.
Okay.
I'm like 90% sure, but I because it came up on a conversation I had with some other working group. But let me double check on that and make sure.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question is, does PG&E have written summaries of this that could be shared that we could incorporate into the plan? I think one of the benefits of this plan is it's going to be just, it's going to be accessible to a large geographic area. And so I think this would be a good way to help share that information. Yes, it's on, I've seen it on your website and it's probably in utility bills, but we, obviously, I think we have a joint goal here of getting word out across the region.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have some fact sheets about these programs. And then I always offer myself up if there's an opportunity to present to any, subgroups within this working group. Absolutely, I'm available.
So if we wanted to work on, so we developed some draft language that goes into the plan, we could work with you to help make sure we're accurate.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, great. Okay, and I should make the same request of Central Coast, Ozzy, since Dan left. Yeah, if Central Coast has any write-ups of the programs that Dan talked about that we can incorporate, I just want to make sure that we're accurately reflecting the programs and the timing and the eligibility so that the information is up to date and accurate.
Sure. What do you need that by?
We'll get to that in a minute, I guess. But we're the overall plan. We're currently working on sort of the assessment of potential chargers and locations, and also, these are sort of funding programs, and so we're trying to get that done by the end of the year, I believe. So if we could have that by the end of the year, that would be great. It's getting close. Okay. Well, I think actually we've sort of talked about number 2 inadvertently, which is what EVSE incentive programs are in place or in plan. Is there anyone else on the call who wants to contribute to number 2 on that, or answering that question? Okay, let's go on to question number 3, which is roadblocks. What roadblocks to electric vehicle supply equipment installation need to be addressed? So I'm sure we're all getting negative feedback. Hey, if this wasn't here, we could be moving forward. So if we have any suggestions, by the way, this project is funded by California, by Caltrans, not by CEC. And so these are, part of these questions have to do with the scope of work, which is basically to identify existing barriers. So if there are barriers that we should be aware of and should be documenting, that's something we want to make sure we're getting your input on.
I can actually speak up on this. It's Stephen with the city of Lompoc. So roadblocks for us have been transformers. Really, we've had that issue come up. I'm kind of tasked with getting a plan set for the city of Lompoc, and trying to work on any installation at all has been a headache lately. And it doesn't look like it's getting looking like it's getting any better anytime soon. I was just on a meeting yesterday with the utility director of Roseville, and he was saying that he's been talking with legislators and seeing what they can do about steel production, but the steel that's used for cars, for the electric vehicles, and for transformers, it's just there's not much. There's not many producers, and the increase in demand has really stepped it back a little bit. So we for us, I know Tesla wanted to come in and bring a line of superchargers. We have SpaceX out here, so that didn't go through, or that project's still on hold, and I think it's been maybe over a year now. other than that, any superchargers, we're DC fast chargers. We're really just kind of waiting on transformers, and our priority really is our current customers, and then new development. But you know that's where right now it's all current customers. So we're trying to make sure that we're ready, we're stable for providing that reliable electricity, and yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now. So definitely want to get a plan set for the future. But it's really we're coming about it as we come about it. We're coding in our system to try to see which transformers are getting hit a little harder, and kind of monitoring that way. So we're almost in a sense playing catch up with this. So yeah.
Stephen, thank you very much. That's a really good point. We hear that all the time, and I've heard typically is between 12 to 18 months backlog on transformers, especially on the smaller transformers that are typically used for level 2 chargers.
Mhm.
But Babita, do you have any information on that, or is there a sheet that kind of describes the backlog timeframes for different sizes of transformers?
So it's known there is a backlog on steel production in general. So I don't have a one-pager on it at this moment. I can see if our sourcing has something we can share externally. But yes, it is known. As far as service planning, delays and so forth, it's really dependent on the project and where the project is located. But we are communicating that to customers if it's something related to, a resource constraint. We are communicating that at this point. But I would agree, we are seeing the same delays on just steel production, manufacturing, which I know our sourcing team is trying to get ahead of.
Yeah,
So
I would. Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I was gonna ask, like, if there's any recommendations just to be sure to kind of keep that in mind, or try to maybe build into that timeline, because we're definitely looking forward to this, to this new load that's coming to our system. But yeah, it's something where like I said, we're just trying to keep up with, and really plan strategically. So yeah, that'd be my request, is just to keep that whole thing in mind, and yeah, going about it as we go about it.
So Babita, you mentioned that one of the factors that impacts the delivery time frame is location. So is that a site specific, or is that sort of within an area, and possibly because of there's a project, say an expansion project that's being done. So is that something that is there information available about that should be addressed in this plan as one of the roadblocks or barriers?
Yeah, what I would say is it's really dependent on the project. If you have a project that requires, like I said, above 2 megawatts of load, that project is going to have to be kind of built into our serving tool. We have a tool that essentially analyzes what load is coming in, what's available. And the quicker that is identified by the customer that it's happening, and the year potentially could be happening, we're better able to plan for it. Because you have to remember, there's a queue of customers right now already in our queue for the next 5 years. And so we just want to make sure that if there is a large project coming in, we're able to serve it safely, we're able to energize it in a timely fashion. But it's really just coordinating with the customer and making sure that it's able to happen.
Is there like a heat map showing where there's a lot of permit activity that should be addressed in this plan, saying, okay, these are areas where there's already a lot of activity, these are areas that are likely to take longer for implementation?
At this point, we don't have a tool like that yet.
Okay. Okie doke. All right. Any other roadblocks or barriers that we should be aware of in addressing in this plan?
Yeah, can I chime in here? I'm fine. I've worked with different EV charger installation incentive programs, and I find that probably seems to me the biggest roadblock is these different programs ask the property owners more than they're willing to do. And with the exception of like programs like Tesla's supercharger program, they come in and they go, all we need is the land. We'll do everything for you. You know, from start to finish, including operation. And seems like almost every other program is, you know, even this one that I'm working with right now that's contemporary to this one is the Communities in Charge program. And that one, you know, they want the property owner to apply for the permit and arrange for the technical layout and everything like that. And it just, you know, and the property owner is just, you know, it's great that you're going to reimburse me for a lot of this stuff, but I got to do a lot of the stuff up front, and it just expecting too much out of the property owners. I think that's a roadblock.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for offering that. And yesterday, or I guess the day before yesterday, we heard one of the as an example of one of the roadblocks is operations and maintenance. So who operates, who maintains, who pays for that? And that's a headache that a lot of smaller agencies are not necessarily willing to take on. So that's an example of something similar to what you're talking about.
Right.
So it's even if, let's say, you know, the PG&E has a make ready program, which by the way is a huge deal, because from our experience, the make ready is the most expensive part of a typical project from a deployment perspective. But there's, you know, you still have to, there's still other parts of the project. So those are the kinds of things that, at the very least, managing the expectations of the implementers of this plan is, I think, an important outcome. Okay. In the interest of time, we should probably move on. We only have 5 minutes left. Other than funding support, and of course, in-kind contributions from utilities, which you're doing, what else could support EVSE installation? Other suggestions? Are there programs that perhaps the utilities have applied for and the CEC or the CPUC said no to, that were good ideas anyway?
You know, one tool that we always get good feedback on is we have a couple of tools on our website where if a customer is kind of hesitant to make that jump to electric, they can go on our website and build out their ideal fleet and see how much it's actually going to cost, see how many vehicles are available, what makes, what manufacturers, see what funding is available for them. And we've had a lot of customers that even haven't, you know, maybe they haven't come through PG&E, maybe they live in a different state. They've actually used this tool to help kind of build out some of their planning. I'll drop that link to our fleet calculator and savings calculator in the chat here, because I think that's something that has been very helpful to a lot of customers and non-customers, like outside of PG&E, that we've received feedback on. And there's also a residential calculator too. So not forgetting our residents in these areas, if they're converting, there's been a lot of hesitancy there, especially with range anxiety, like you explained earlier. And these tools will help them kind of understand that the cost shift from owning a gas-powered vehicle. So I'll drop those in the chat as well.
That would be great. And speaking of the chat, if you're on this call and the email was not shown on the calendar invite because it was handed off to you from one of your colleagues, definitely put that in the chat. So we want to make sure we have your contact information. So the last question is, we're going forward with this plan. We're going to have follow-up questions. So how do we involve the utilities in our site recommendations? And, you know, again, we're not going to be applying for projects out of this plan, but we are going to want to identify sites. We want to make sure that those sites get vetted with utilities. So how do we do that proactively without, again, it's not a project, it's planning, but we want to make sure that we get input on a timely manner from our utility partners.
You know, for us, I think you know, just running kind of jumping off the same thing that that Babito was saying is it's kind of project by project, case by case. So, for our service territory, I know we're super small, but just running that by us to give us a kind of a heads up, and we can give a more or less a timeline on what we could have ready, if it's not already ready. So that would be my kind of
Great.
take on that.
Thank you. Any other
Did I hear,
input, suggestions?
did I hear, Oswaldo can confirm this. Did I hear that 3CE is actually going to provide technical support up front to help entities decide and maybe plan out charger installations? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Barry, thanks for bringing that up. I think where CCAs can be involved really is in the technical assistance realm. We've already begun to look into how we can provide technical assistance services ranging from planning to site design to engineering for various programs. That includes,
Yeah.
right at this instance, that includes Electrify Your Ride for multi-unit dwellings and certain commercial sites eligible for DC fast charging. In the future, we're looking to develop a program known as Plan Your Fleet, which would effectively provide a very similar service for our city and county entities, basically helping their fleet managers, whoever they may be, for their respective agencies, get that more direct assistance when it comes to planning their EVSE projects and providing designs for those particular projects they wish to recommend.
Excellent.
I think that's huge.
Great. So we're running out of time. I just want to ask one last question, and we tried to be as inclusive as possible with invitations for today's focus group, but we were not able to get everybody that we wanted. So are there folks from other CCAs within this study area? Also, the contact for Southern California Edison, who I haven't yet actually had a chance to work with yet. It would be good to know who your counterparts are with these other agencies so that we can make sure that we follow up so that we can include their programs in this plan as well. So again, I put the map of the study area up there, which does include Southern California Edison territory, and I believe a couple of other CCAs as well. So if you have contacts at your partner agencies, partner utilities and CCAs that you could recommend, it would be helpful to know that.
I can reach out to our partners at FDE, get someone.
That'd be great. Yeah, I just, I want to make sure that, we're capturing the entire geographic spectrum as early in the planning process as possible. What we don't want to do is finish the plan and then have them come back and say, hey, what about us? So we are trying to be inclusive. It's not easy. This is a huge area. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate your input and your great suggestions, which we'll incorporate into the plan. Please go onto the website. Also, check out the social pinpoint. And then we will hopefully be putting out a draft that will be shared, and then we can get your input or on early drafts so we can work directly with you to make sure that we're capturing the information accurately. So without anything else, I want to be conscious of your time and your busy schedules. Thanks again for your time today and your help.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
All right.